It was supposed to be the kind of airport morning everyone forgets by lunchtime. The glass walls glowing with pale sunlight, the low hum of rolling suitcases, voices layered over flight announcements, security officers strolling in disciplined patterns, nothing more dramatic than a spilled latte. Then, 14 police dogs broke rank, and the entire terminal stopped breathing. They didn't bark all at once at first. It began with a single low warning rumble from the lead shepherd, a dog so precise and controlled that the handlers trusted him more than they trusted half the tech in the building. He was supposed to be clearing the concourse ahead of a high-profile arrival, nose to the ground, gait even, tail neutral. Instead, he lifted his head, nostrils flaring, eyes locking on something small standing alone near gate B12. The second dog caught the scent a heartbeat later, then the third. Then, like a ripple moving through muscle, all 14 shifted focus. It was not random. It was not a training glitch. It was instinct and training overlapping in a single wordless decision. Passengers froze. Some thought it was a drill. Some pulled out phones. A few ducked behind seats. But the dogs ignored everyone. Their formation dissolved and reformed, bodies angling like a practiced unit, and in seconds, they had surrounded a little boy in a blue jacket, clutching a soft toy to his chest so tightly his fingers had gone white. He was maybe 5, maybe 6, too young to be alone, too small to be the center of so much animal power. He looked up, eyes wide, confused, not crying yet, just trying to understand why 14 huge dogs had suddenly made a living wall around him. One of the handlers shouted, "Hold positions!" But the dogs didn't step back. Their ears were forward, eyes bright, bodies tense, but not aggressive. They weren't about to attack. They were shielding. Every officer in range knew it immediately. It was an upside-down moment. Highly trained working dogs refusing to obey a command because something more primal had triggered. People whispered, "Is he dangerous?" And, "Is this a test?" And, "What's in his bag?" The officer in charge, Daniel Reyes, tall, dark uniform pristine, expression cut from calm, moved in, one hand raised to keep human beings back, while 14 German shepherds and Malinois held an unbreakable circle. "Hey, buddy," Reyes said gently, voice low so it wouldn't startle the dogs. "You're okay. You're safe. We just need to check something real quick." The boy's lip trembled. "I didn't do anything," he whispered. The dogs barked then, all at once, a sharp chorus that bounced off glass and tile, a warning aimed not at him, but at something he was holding. People in the terminal gasped. Somewhere farther down the concourse, security alarms began to flash, red light pulsing across polished floors. What nobody in the terminal knew at that moment, what no one could have guessed while they held their breath and shot shaky videos and wondered if they were about to be evacuated, was that this was not where the story began. The story began 1 hour earlier, behind a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only," inside a briefing room that still smelled like coffee and disinfectant and wet dog. Reyes had been standing at the front, arms folded, as his unit took the briefing for the day. They were good, tight. The kind of handlers who didn't chat when the supervisor had that particular look. A look that meant this was not just routine luggage sweeps and public presence. On the wall behind him, a screen showed a layout of the terminal with a bright rectangle around gates B10 through B14. "We've got a flag transit," Reyes said, tapping the board. We're not broadcasting it. We're not announcing it over the radio. We're not freaking anyone out. But we treat every anomaly like it's real until it isn't. You all know the drill. They nodded. Dogs lay at their feet, alert, ears swiveling at the sound of their names. We're expecting a courier attempt, he continued, most likely human, possibly disguised as personal item. We were given scent profiles that don't match traditional explosive signatures. Hybrid compounds. Could be contraband, could be bio, could be a tracker, meant to be picked up on the other side. What that means for us, dogs might alert without the usual cues. If they break formation, do not force them back. You let them work. You support. That was the key rule in this unit. You could tell a dog to sit, to stay, to heel. But once that nose locked onto a scent it had been trained to flag, you never punished initiative. That's how you lost good dogs. That's how you missed the one bad day. Still, even with that briefing, even with the whisper from airport intel about a possible handoff involving a civilian carrier who didn't even know they were a carrier, nobody expected civilian to mean child. That was the part that would rattle Reyes later, when he lay awake replaying the footage. They had prepared for a traveler, maybe a distracted parent pushing a stroller, maybe a tourist with too many bags, maybe even a staffer. They had not prepared for a boy small enough that his backpack looked oversized. Back in the terminal, the boy tried again. "I'm waiting for my aunt," he said, voice wobbling. She went to talk to the lady at the counter. She said, "Don't move." He swallowed hard. Did I do bad? Reyes's heart squeezed because it was always worse when they were scared and trying to be brave. "You didn't do anything bad," he said at once. "You did everything right. Sometimes the dogs smell things ordinary people can't. We just listen to them, all right?" He glanced at his radio. "Control, this is K9 lead at B12. I need EOD on standby, and I need gate lockdown on my position. No panic. We have a minor in the middle of the alert. Repeat, minor. Copy, K9, lead," EOD notified. "Gate lockdown in progress." Overhead, the calm voice of the airport switched scripts. "Attention, passengers at gates B10 through B14, due to a security screening, please remain in your current locations." People who had been edging closer sat down again, eyes wide. A few filmed openly. One woman wiped tears, whispering, "Poor baby." The dogs were steady now, forming two layers, inner ring facing the boy, outer ring facing outward to the crowd. It was a perfect protective circle, the kind you saw in training videos, but rarely in the wild. Then the scent shifted. The lead dog, Orion, a sable shepherd with a scar on his right foreleg from an earlier operation, pressed in closer. His nose hovered not over the boy's clothes, not over his hands, but over the soft toy he held. A stuffed bear with floppy ears and a lopsided smile, the kind sold at airport gift shops. Orion's body language changed from alert to imminent. Tail stiff, shoulders tight, chin low. A low, rolling growl vibrated in his chest. The other dogs synchronized, eyes all locking on the toy. "Okay," Reyes murmured, shifting his weight. He knew what that stance meant. "Kiddo, I need to borrow your bear for just a second, okay? I'll give it right back." The boy clung tighter. "It's from my dad," he whispered. "He said don't lose it." A murmur swept the crowd. Even officers behind the cordon exchanged glances. That was how couriers worked sometimes. Pick an item with sentimental value so the carrier wouldn't let anyone touch it. Fury flashed hot under Reyes's calm. Whoever had done this had picked the one person who would follow instructions more than anyone else. A child trying to be good. "I promise," Reyes said, gaze never leaving the dog. "You see these dogs? They protect people. They're protecting you. They just think something might hurt you. Let's help them help you. Just for a minute." The boy's fingers shook. He looked from the wall of dogs to the officer who was talking to him like he mattered. Slowly, painfully, he extended the bear. Reyes took it with both hands, as if it was an infant. The bear was heavier than it should have been. Not by a lot, but enough. Not just stuffing, not just fabric. Something inside the torso. Something solid. Something that kept cold, even in a warm terminal. "Get me the handheld," Reyes said without looking away. An officer in tactical gray hustled forward with a compact scanner. He swept it over the bear. The device chirped, then emitted a hard, staccato beep. The kind of sound that meant, this is not decorative wiring. This is not a kid's voice box. This is a device. "We got a signature," the officer said, disbelief widening his eyes. "It's wired." Passengers who heard that word began to rise, instinctively trying to flee, but other officers pushed them back down. "Stay where you are," one shouted. "You're safer where you are." The boy's lower lip trembled again. "I didn't know," he said, eyes filling. "I didn't know. I didn't—" "Hey." Reyes's voice softened, cutting through everything. "I know you didn't know. You were so brave. You held on to it like they told you. That was good. You did good." One of the dogs, smaller, female, nerves like lightning, let out a warning bark toward the far edge of the secured area. She had caught a second scent. Human. Male. Moving away too fast for a concerned relative. Reyes flicked his gaze up, just in time to see a man in a dark jacket turn his head and start walking in the opposite direction. Not running, not bolting, just accelerating in that guilty, "I hope nobody sees me" way. "Diaz!" Reyes snapped. "Blue jacket gate B9 moving. Don't spook him. Track." Two officers peeled off, moving like shadows. The man glanced back and saw them. For a split second, his expression betrayed him. Not surprise at the commotion, fear of being connected to it. He bolted. Chaos ignited. "Stop! Sir, stop!" Passengers screamed. The man tried to cut through a row of seats, nearly knocked over an old traveler. One of the handlers released her dog with a sharp command. The animal launched, perfectly controlled, taking the man down in a practiced, non-lethal strike that sent him sprawling face first onto the polished floor. People cheered, people gasped, people filmed. But for Reyes, that was background. The threat was here, in his hands. The device inside the bear could be timed, could be remote, could be decoy, could be only a tracker. The worst part was not knowing. He needed answers, and he needed them before EOD even stepped off the elevator. He moved slowly to the center of the circle, dogs adjusting around him. "Eyes on the boy," he murmured. No sudden moves. The boy stood very still where the inner ring had left him, his shoulders shaking silently. One of the dogs reading him nosed his elbow gently, a reassurance in fur and breath. The scanner officer swallowed. "If it's live, we don't know that," Reyes said. "We don't panic. We follow the tree." A small voice, thin but determined, broke in. The lady said to give it to me, the boy said. Every adult within earshot stilled. What lady? Reyes asked, not unkindly, but with the steel of someone whose entire morning had just clarified. At the counter? At the restaurant? At the door? At the big door before the other door, the boy said, trying to explain in kid geography. She had the clothes, like the people who work here. She said my aunt was busy, and to hold this for her, and don't let anybody take it, and my aunt would say thank you. A cold, sinking certainty moved through Reyes. Inside job, uniform, or convincing fake. Using a child in a crowded, controlled space because people didn't look twice at someone in airport colors handing something to a kid. It was cruel. It was calculated. It was exactly the kind of thing their briefing had tried to warn them about without terrifying them. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. EOD arrived at a crouched run, gear bags bumping their sides, faces set. What have we got? The lead tech asked. Reyes handed over the bear with visible reluctance, as if he hated taking it away from the kid, even now. Soft carrier on a miner, internal wiring, unknown power, dogs alerted hard. We have a potential associate detained down concourse. We also have a potential insider who made the handoff in uniform. Got it? The tech set the bear on the floor inside a portable blast shield they unfolded like a grim suitcase, hands moving fast, precise. Everyone hold. We'll X-ray. The terminal was so quiet, then you could hear the dogs breathing. People who had been filming lowered their phones, suddenly aware that this was not clickbait. This was a child who had almost been used as a shield for something ugly. The boy's aunt finally broke through the line. A flustered, terrified woman with boarding passes clutched in one hand and panic all over her face. "Theo!" she cried. "Theo, baby, are you okay?" The dogs did not let her into the inner circle. They knew she was not the threat, but they also knew they had not been told to break. Reyes turned, hand up. "Ma'am, he's safe. We've got him. We just need—" "What happened?" She sobbed. "I was only at the desk for 2 minutes. They said I had to sign something because his ticket—" "Ma'am," Reyes said, eyes kind but firm. "Somebody saw you were busy and tried to use him. He didn't do anything wrong. He was perfect." She looked over his shoulder at the boy and at the dogs around him and broke down crying. Not just from fear, but from the shock of realizing how close she had come to walking onto a plane holding something she didn't understand. That was the moment, later, that people would say, what happened next shocked everyone. Because the X-ray came back, and it wasn't a bomb the way everyone expected, the way the movies had taught them to expect. It was worse in a different direction. It was a hollowed-out toy, carrying a compact, shielded module designed to piggyback on airport systems. Sniffing, listening, mapping. A piece of hardware meant to be carried past security by the most harmless-looking human in the building, so someone on the other side could collect intelligence without ever entering the country. They hadn't been trying to blow up the airport. They had been trying to learn it, exploit it, use it later. And they had almost gotten away with it. Almost. Because they had underestimated the dogs. That was the end of the first half of the day, the part everyone in the terminal saw. Heroic dogs, scared child, calm officer, detained suspect, weeping guardian, emergency team working fast. But the second half, the part that played out in interrogation rooms, in camera rooms, in service, corridors that smelled like jet fuel and coffee, was where the real story locked into place and showed just how close the airport had come to becoming a test site. Hours later, after the boy had been given hot chocolate and a blanket and endless reassurance that he was good, so good, and after the ant had stopped shaking long enough to sign statements, Reyes sat in a small interview room across from the man they'd tackled. The guy had the bruised look of someone who hadn't expected dogs. He kept flexing his shoulder like it hurt. He wore a badge on a lanyard they now knew was counterfeit. "You're wasting your time," the man muttered. "I don't know anything." Reyes was calm. He always was. "You picked a child," he said, voice low. "That tells me you knew exactly what you were doing." "I didn't pick him," the man snapped. "I was supposed to make sure it got through. That's it. I don't even know what it is." "You didn't think to ask why they needed a kid?" The man looked away. "Money's good. You don't ask." "We asked," Reyes said. "This morning, we asked all the dogs. They answered." The man frowned, not following. Reyes didn't explain. He didn't have to. In the surveillance room next door, they were reviewing camera feeds. 10 minutes before the handoff, a woman in a very convincing airport polo had approached the boy and his aunt while they were in line. She had a tablet. She had a patient smile. She said she was from customer care, and that the aunt needed to step aside to sign a verification because they were traveling with a minor. She'd done it smoothly, like someone who had done it before. The aunt had followed, trusting the uniform. The boy had waited because that's what good kids did. The woman had leaned down, said something friendly and ordinary, then offered the bear. She had walked away without looking back. She had known exactly how long she had before the aunt returned. Now, in the present, she was gone. Out of uniform, out of the airport. Vanished into a car that had false plates. But they had her face. They had her gait. They had the expression a second before the dogs broke formation and ruined the whole plan. She thought dogs were obstacles, Reyes said later to his team as they sat around exhausted, dogs stretched at their feet, the adrenaline finally ebbing. She didn't think of them as detectives. She didn't think they'd override handlers. She didn't think they'd choose a human over a command. One of the handlers, still shaken, said, "They didn't just choose a human. They chose a kid." Exactly. Reyes looked through the glass to where the boy now sat in a chair far too big for him, feet swinging, holding a new, completely empty bear their department had given him. One of the dogs, Orion, lay beside him, head on paws, eyes half-lidded, but always watching. The boy's fingers were in his fur. "That's why you listen to them," Reyes said softly. "That's why you let them work." Word of what had happened spread, not because the department released every detail, but because too many passengers had filmed the circle of dogs guarding a child. The videos showed the moment the boy handed over the toy. They showed the aunt returning, face crumpling. They showed the handlers calm and firm while alarms flashed red. Comment sections filled with people saying, "I didn't know dogs could disobey for the right reason," and "They protected him like he was one of them," and "I'm never doubting working dogs again." What the videos didn't catch was the small moment when the boy, ready to go at last, looked up at Reyes. "Are they mad at me?" he asked. "For making them bark?" "They're proud of you," Reyes said, no hesitation. "You kept everyone safe today." "But I was just holding it." "Exactly. Reyes said. "That's how strong you were." Outside, the airport went back to normal faster than anyone believed it could. Planes still landed. Families still reunited. Business travelers still huffed at delays. But for the people who had been there, the concourse always held an echo of that circle of dogs and the little boy in the middle. And for the unit, the day became proof of everything they preached in briefings. Trust the nose. Trust the training. Trust the animal that knows danger before humans do. Later, when reports were written and agencies looped in, and the hardware in the toy was traced to people who had no business getting hold of airport schematics, there was a line in Reyes' summary that was pure, simple, and truer than any technical analysis. Alert was initiated by K-9 unit in defense of minor. Unplanned deviation from formation resulted in prevention of unauthorized device infiltration. Deviation should be considered correct behavior and reinforced. In other words, the dogs were right. They had seen past the disguise, past the uniform, past the hustle, straight to the smallest, most vulnerable person in the room, and decided he was worth disobeying for.